The bell above the door chimed, a lonely sound swallowed by the cavernous silence of the nearly empty Route 66 diner. Outside, the desert wind howled like a banshee, rattling the dusty windows. Inside, the vinyl booths gleamed dully under the flickering fluorescent lights, reflecting the eerie glow back at me. I huddled deeper into my collar, pulling my threadbare jacket tighter. I was bone-tired, the kind of tired that seeps into your marrow after 16 straight hours behind the wheel. My throat felt like sandpaper, and my stomach growled a mournful tune. I hadn't seen another car for the last 100 miles, just the endless, unforgiving expanse of the Arizona desert stretching out on either side of the ribbon of asphalt. This diner, a beacon of greasy salvation, was a welcome sight. The only other occupant was a slumped figure at the counter, nursing a cup of coffee that probably dated back to the Eisenhower administration. He wore a stained trucker hat pulled low over his eyes, and his shoulders were hunched, giving off an aura of profound weariness. I figured we were kindred spirits, road-weary souls seeking solace in the lukewarm comforts of a roadside diner. "Be with ya in a sec, hon?" A voice drawled from behind the counter. A woman emerged, her face etched with lines that spoke of hard living and countless nights serving weary travelers. Her name tag read Marlene, and her smile, though tired, was genuine. "What can I get for you, sweetie?" she asked, her voice raspy but kind. "Just coffee, please," I said, settling into the booth closest to the window. "And maybe a piece of pie. Apple if you have it." "Apple it is," Marlene said, already reaching for a chipped mug. "Been a slow night. You headed far?" "California," I replied, watching as she poured the coffee, the dark liquid steaming in the dim light. "Got a job lined up there." "California dreamin'," she chuckled, placing the mug and a spoon in front of me. "Everyone's chasin' that dream. Just be careful what you find when you get there." Her words hung in the air, a strange note of warning in her otherwise friendly tone. I shrugged it off, chalking it up to the weariness that permeated everything in this place. The coffee was strong and bitter, but it jolted me awake a little. I took a long sip, savoring the warmth spreading through my chest. Just as Marlene placed a thick slice of apple pie in front of me, a sudden gust of wind buffeted the diner, rattling the windows with renewed ferocity. The lights flickered violently, plunging the diner into near darkness for a heart-stopping moment. "Damn wind," Marlene muttered, heading back behind the counter. "Always plays havoc with the electrics." When the lights finally stabilized, they burned a little dimmer, casting long, distorted shadows across the room. I glanced back at the trucker at the counter. He hadn't moved, hadn't even flinched. He was a statue of exhaustion, lost in his own world. I took a bite of the pie. It was surprisingly good, the apples tart and the crust flaky. As I ate, I started to notice things, subtle details that had escaped me in my initial weariness. The faded wallpaper, peeling in the corners, depicted a pastoral scene that seemed strangely out of place in this desolate landscape. The jukebox in the corner, its chrome tarnished with age, looked like it hadn't been played in decades. And then there was the silence. It wasn't just the absence of noise. It was a heavy, oppressive silence that seemed to press down on me, filling the air with an unspoken tension. The wind still howled outside, but it was as if the sound was somehow muffled, as if the diner was insulated against the outside world. I glanced at Marlene, who was now wiping down the counter with a practiced hand. Her face was set in a grim expression, her eyes darting nervously towards the window. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice sounding louder than I intended in the unnerving quiet. She jumped, startled. "Oh yeah, honey, just the wind. Makes me jumpy, that's all." Her answer didn't quite ring true. There was something else there, something she wasn't telling me. I finished my pie and pushed the plate away. The silence was gnawing at me, making me increasingly uneasy. I needed to get back on the road, to escape this place and its unsettling atmosphere. "I should probably get going," I said, reaching for my wallet. Marlene nodded, her eyes still fixed on the window. "Safe travels, dear." As I walked to the counter to pay, I noticed a small, framed photograph tucked away behind the cash register. It was a picture of a young woman, smiling brightly, her arm around a man in a military uniform. Underneath the picture, a small plaque read, "Never forget." I paid for my meal and turned to leave. As I reached the door, I glanced back at the trucker at the counter. He was still slumped over his coffee, his face hidden beneath the brim of his hat. But this time something was different. He was trembling. His whole body shook with a silent, violent tremor. A sudden wave of unease washed over me, stronger than anything I had felt before. I didn't know why, but I knew I had to get out of there now. I pushed open the door and stepped back out into the desert night. The wind slammed into me, almost knocking me off my feet. I stumbled towards my car, fumbling for my keys. As I unlocked the door, I heard a scream, a blood-curdling shriek that pierced the night, came from inside the diner. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. My first instinct was to run, to get in my car and drive as far away as possible. But then I thought of Marlene, of the kindness in her tired eyes. I couldn't just leave her alone in there. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I didn't know what was happening inside that diner, but I couldn't abandon her. I turned back and pushed open the door again. The scene that greeted me was one of utter chaos. The lights were flickering frantically, casting grotesque shadows that danced across the walls. The trucker was no longer slumped over the counter. He was standing, his back to me, his body still shaking uncontrollably. But it wasn't the trucker that caught my attention. It was Marlene. She was standing behind the counter, her face contorted in a mask of terror. Her eyes were wide with horror, fixed on something I couldn't see. "What's going on?" I shouted, my voice trembling. Marlene didn't answer. She just stood there, frozen in place, her eyes wide with fear. Then the trucker turned around, and I screamed. It wasn't a man I saw standing there. It was something else, something that defied description. Its skin was stretched taut over its bones, its eyes hollow and black. Its mouth was a gaping maw filled with rows of needle-sharp teeth. And from its chest, a dark, viscous liquid oozed, staining the floor beneath its feet. The creature lunged at Marlene, its claws outstretched. I didn't think, I just reacted. I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy ceramic sugar dispenser, and hurled it at the creature with all my might. It hit the creature square in the face, shattering the dispenser and sending shards of porcelain flying. The creature staggered back, momentarily stunned. "Run!" I shouted at Marlene. "Get out of here!" Marlene didn't need to be told twice. She scrambled out from behind the counter and fled towards the back of the diner. I didn't wait to see what the creature would do. I turned and ran, sprinting towards the door. I didn't look back. I just ran, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath ragged in my throat. I reached my car and fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get them in the ignition. Finally, the engine roared to life. I jammed the car into gear and sped away, leaving the Route 66 diner and the horrors within it behind. I drove for hours, not stopping until the sun began to rise, painting the desert sky in hues of orange and pink. I finally pulled over at a dusty gas station, my body trembling with exhaustion and fear. I stumbled into the gas station, desperate for coffee and answers. The attendant, a grizzled old man with a skeptical look in his eyes, barely glanced at me as he poured me a cup. "Rough night, huh?" he said, his voice dry. "You have no idea," I replied, taking a long, shaky sip of coffee. I was at that Route 66 diner up the road. I started to tell him what I had seen, about the creature, about Marlene, about the terror that had gripped me. But as I spoke, I saw a look of understanding dawn in his eyes. "The Route 66 diner, huh?" he said, his voice low. "Haven't heard anyone mention that place in years." "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart sinking. He sighed, a deep, mournful sound. "That diner's been closed for decades, son. Burned down in the 70s. Everyone inside perished." I stared at him, my mind reeling. "That's impossible," I said. "I was just there. I saw Marlene." "You saw ghosts, son." he said, his voice firm. That diner's haunted. Some say the souls of those who died there are trapped, reliving their final moments over and over again. He went on to tell me the story of the diner, of a robbery gone wrong, of a fire that had consumed everything. He told me of the young woman in the photograph, the waitress who had died trying to protect her customers. As he spoke, I began to understand. The oppressive silence, the flickering lights, the sense of dread that had permeated the diner. It all made sense now. I had stumbled into a place where time had stopped, where the past was forever present. I finished my coffee and thanked the old man, my head spinning. As I walked back to my car, I glanced back towards the horizon, towards the place where the Route 66 diner stood. It was still there, a shimmering mirage in the desert heat. I knew I would never forget what I had seen that night. It was a reminder that some places are best left undisturbed, that some doors are best left unopened. And it was a chilling glimpse into a world beyond our own, a world where the past refuses to stay buried. I got back in my car and drove on, towards California and the promise of a new life. But as I drove, I knew that a part of me would always remain back there, in that haunted diner, forever trapped in the endless desert night. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I would never look at a roadside diner the same way again.